now the Mavs are obviously back, and they've beat 3 of the top 4 seeds in the West to get here. And people have made a huge deal out of the path because all 3 of their opponents that they beat won over 50 games. The Clippers were a 51-win team. Thunder was the number 1 seed with 57. The Wolves with 56. They've had no home court advantage at any of these series, and somehow they were able to win that pivotal Game 5 on the road in all 3 series. And per friend of the program, Mark Stein, in his newsletter, since the NBA adopted the 16-team playoff format in 1984, when I was born, the Mavericks are just the 3rd team ever to reach the finals, beating 3 opponents with at least 50 wins. The other 2 teams were the 95, never underestimate the heart of a champion, Houston Rockets, and also the 2001 LA Lakers. I guess my question for you is... Who are you going to say
your favorite player on the Rockets was, man? Kenny Smith?
Sam Cassell, Robert Horry, Pete Chilcutt.
I'm just saying, you shouted out Yama Himni for 2011, so who was the Yama Himni of that team?
Samaki Walker on the Lakers.
You're like, thank you to David Thorpe, but shout out to Otis Thorpe. Is that what you wanted, man?
My question for you is, did it feel like, as you're watching Dallas go through this run to the finals, did it feel like this impressive run? Because I feel like there's more parity now in the league. Even though you look at it on paper, clearly they beat 3 very good teams, but I felt like they were pretty evenly matched against them, and it didn't feel like this was just like this underdog 5th seed that kind of had to slay 3 monsters to get there. Did you feel that way?
No, I didn't think so. I thought, again, a lot of teams in the West is just dependent on matchups. It was kind of like this big game of rock, paper, scissors. And I think for Dallas, what's impressive is they were in all these games and they were all usually pretty close, but Dallas kind of had that separating edge, whether that's Lucas heroics or Kyrie's heroics, or even just, sometimes defensive heroics by some of the role players too, that got them through a lot of these games, I would say they've had the harder road for sure. They've faced teams that have been stronger than what the East has offered. I think the East has also had injuries as well, because I think Boston probably could have faced a much harder road if they had just faced healthy versions of any of the 3 teams they played. But still, I think Dallas was in close games and consistently able to pull those out. Of course, there's some exceptions, the Timberwolves, won game 4, and OKC made that big comeback in their series. I think Dallas was up 20, and they ultimately lost that game. I don't know. I was also groggy because I just landed back from China that one, and I was watching it on the Up Express on my phone. So I don't know.
Food poisoning.
Maybe I hallucinated that game, but I'm pretty sure Shea hit a bunch of big shots down the stretch, and Luka and Kyrie looked very lethargic. But yeah, it's been a very impressive run, and you know what? It actually reminds me a lot of Dallas's actual 2011 run, where they went through. They had to beat some really, really good teams along that stretch, and I felt like they were more battle hardened than let's say the Heat were by the time they got to the finals through the East.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great call, and I think it's I think they finished 16-2 at the end of the regular season, and really started becoming a top defensive team, and it's really impressive. I know you always like to look at it from a team building standpoint too, the fact that they just actively dropped out of the play-in last year, and then was able to get in the draft and get Derek Lively, trading our guy Grant Williams, the most annoying man in the NBA, to get PJ Washington, and obviously the Derek Jones signing. They've had to and getting Daniel Gafford, they've had to nail every single one of these moves, arguably, and they have.
Yeah. And also, where did Derek Jones Jr. come from? This version of Derek Jones Jr., who was really knocking down threes comfortably, really making offensive plays comfortable. Because he always struck me as a very athletic 5th option type, and he's really blossomed. He's still obviously the 5th option. Don't get me wrong, maybe 4th option depending on what you want to call the lob centers. But he's done a really good job, especially in that Minnesota Timberwolves series.
Yeah, so much of it is just fit, right? I don't. I think this is a version of Aaron Gordon, getting Aaron Gordon to Denver where there's a good fit. Right. Dallas is finally figured out okay, we got Kyrie next to Luka, and now we have these bigs, and now we have these wings. Like they were able to just like figure it out, because none of these players, like you mentioned, individually really impress you that much, right? Like where people
No.
actually, I know there were like, people clamoring for like, oh, PJ Washington is a guy that they should pluck out of Charlotte. He might be good on like a really good team, but like I don't think anyone could have imagined like this collection of guys, of role players, like playing, this huge of an impact on a finals team. But they've been
Yeah.
able to make it work. But honestly, props to Luka and Kyrie too, man. I mean, they're putting up numbers that are reminiscent. Like you talk about that 2001 Lakers team. I think they became the first duo to both put up 35 points in a conference finals game
Damn.
since Shaq and Kobe.